Hey everyone, you're listening to the Simple Electronics podcast, and I'm your host, Dan from the Simple Electronics YouTube channel. And with me today, I've got a very special guest. Actually, he's here for his second suck of the salve, as Dave Jones would say. Anthony from the One Circuit YouTube channel and blog. How are you, Anthony?
I'm well, thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me on again. Much
No
appreciated.
problem. I'm the one who's honored to have you on, and I hope I made you feel at home with that Australian style intro there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Dave's pretty well known for his Australianisms. I guess the thing is that not everyone uses those, so sometimes even our ears prick up when Dave's talking.
Oh, interesting.
Mm.
Well, I'm not. My ears are not refined enough to be able to tell the different kind of Australianisms yet. So
And
with
I don't
time,
know,
though.
I don't know Dave at all, but of course I know him very well from his content, and yeah, he. I don't know whether he's actually putting that on or whether he's the real deal. But there's an Australian out there which is rapidly disappearing that uses all that sort of terminology. You Crocodile Dundee sort of character, and he uses the big knife to open his mail up, and yeah, he's quite the character.
I think you know what. I think the big knife was for fun, and then people started complaining that he's going to damage the packages, which made him use the knife even more. Because I mean,
Yes.
that's just the kind of guy he seems to be.
Yeah, and Julian in the UK has had a sort of similar thing where he's sort of opening up mail with blunt instruments, and DefPom uses his sharpened it's like, what is it, like a RAM PCB or something like that. So yeah, people have got their own style, I guess.
Yeah, it's laptop RAM, I think, which is really
Yeah,
funny because I've been thinking of designing and sending him like an X-Acto knife, but that's just 3D printed in the shape of a RAM stick. But
yeah,
that's another story for another day, I think.
yeah. Well, he makes a good point, which I have made on my mailbags as well, that you don't want to damage the goods inside. So a blunt knife is not such a bad thing in the end.
I feel like there's like a middle zone, right? Where if you use a really blunt instrument, it works really well because it won't damage anything. And if you use a really sharp instrument, it works really well because it won't damage anything. You won't be forcing the knife type thing. And
Yep.
I think it's the in between, what I use for mailbags, to be honest, which is an X-Acto blade that hasn't been replaced in 2 years. I think that's where the problems occur.
Yeah, and I have had the odd comment about that rusty blade, and I have done some more recent mailbags where I've used a sharp blade, but I do worry about what I'm cutting through, so I try and feel the edge of the packet fairly carefully.
Yeah, me too. And people have to also realize that as YouTubers, and as just people who like ordering junk, I don't know if you consider yourself that, but me definitely. We have a lot of experience opening packages. So, even if you see us damage one package, folks, it's like you're looking at the 300th package that we've opened that way. Like our average is still pretty good. So don't worry
That's
about
true.
it.
That's true. I sort of regret in the end. I didn't know mailbags were a thing, honestly, until a couple of years in, and I've opened a lot of packages, and I didn't think it was such a big deal that people see that, but I realized that I was watching a lot of mailbags, and I thought, oh, maybe I should do it because I actually find them quite fun.
That's what actually started me on the YouTube journey. I think I'm trying to remember who are the first people I've watched on YouTube. I think Big Clive was the first electronics YouTuber that I've watched because I had figured out I was on eBay for a very long time, since about 2004, 2003, something like that. High school days when I was buying car parts off eBay, and I saw that you can get cheap LEDs on eBay, and I'm like, man, these could be junk. I have no idea. There must be somebody who's ordered them and like sort of reviewed them. And lo and behold, that's when I saw Big Clive had a video on them. And from Big Clive, I believe I went to Julian Eyelet, and I had found AVE from that. And so I think those three were the genesis of YouTube. And then I thought, man, I'm like ordering this cheap Chinese stuff all the time. Maybe I should make mailbag videos too, right? I was thinking that at the time. So I think that was the genesis. So I actually started with my interest in mailbag videos.
Yeah, I'll never forget the first one I did, which is, I mean, and it seems like cheating because it's such an easy thing to do. You set the camera rolling, you open a few packages, And damn if it doesn't get 2 or 3 times the normal views of of the ones that you put weeks of work into. But people just love them, so yeah, give the people what they want, I guess.
I feel like I hit a critical point now that my regular videos get as many views as my mailbag videos. So I don't know if my mailbag videos are just becoming less interesting, or if I'm garnering a an audience that likes my other videos. I don't know, but still, though, you are right, because still the videos that take the most effort to make are the ones that I get the least views on. So I mean, you can look at the snow speeder as an example, the remote control winter craft that I made. That thing was like hundreds of CAD hours and prototyping, and the filming used 2 cameras, 3 cameras, I think at times, editing like crazy. And I got okay amounts of views, but until I put it on my homepage and made it autoplay, I only had about 1,000 views on it, which is really low considering the amount of work.
Yeah, well, you certainly can't. You certainly can't pick it. I was actually thinking about trying a different strategy this year rather than have it, because one of the things that disappoints me about the mailbag is that you open something, and I definitely want to use it straight away. And I feel as though someone like Pile of Stuff has a great balance between opening a package and then using it in some way. And I haven't been able to strike that balance. But what I was thinking about was probably something like showing the use of it as a normal video, but then having the package opening as a sort of picture in picture on the side, so you sort of get both parts of it. So I have actually done a couple of those, which haven't appeared yet on the channel, but um, that gives me the opportunity to have a bit of a play with the actual uh, whatever it is that I've ordered, but still have that packet opening pleasure that all of us find. You know.
Yeah, there's got to be an answer somewhere in there, and that might be the answer. I tried to give it a quick demo, but honestly, a lot of the stuff I order is stuff that is over my head. It's over my skill level, at least programming wise. So, like when I have those one wire. I guess my non Patreons haven't seen this yet, and I guess you haven't either. But I got some one wire temperature sensors, and I'm trying to think what they're called, like BP two something. I don't know. And
The
I mean,
BME 280s or the BPEs 280s or something of those ones, the little
I think,
modules.
yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I can easily hook it up, but then I have to go find like a library and then put a sketch. And obviously, it's kind of useless to plug it in without a display, because how are you going to show it working? So then got to get an I squared C like LCD library and then hack something together. I just if it starts taking the fun out of the mailbag video, I just not going to do it. So it's unfortunate, but when I get stuff that's over my head like that, I have to just talk about it a little bit and then move on, because it's just too much work to set it up for me.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I open something. There's also this idea that there's a gap of maybe a month or two since it was ordered, and I don't know how many times I've looked back at my mailbag videos, and I literally say I have no idea why I ordered this. And it sounds so stupid, but it's actually true. And what I need to have a look at a little bit of history, do a little bit of searching, and then I go, oh yeah, that's right. I saw this video, and that's what I want it for. Well, the viewer gets none of that. They just get me going, I don't know why I ordered this, and it just sounds stupid. So that's why I thought I might try something different this year.
That's what, that's very true, because yeah, I forget all the time, because sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's more like 2 or 3 months, and there's no way I can remember 2 or 3 months in the future what I would have wanted something for. And like Pile of Stuff, for example, he gets a lot of crap in his comments. I don't know about so much anymore, but I know it used to be a big problem, where he says, I don't really know what this is. Let me go check on the computer. And people are like, bullshit, you ordered it. You know what it is. But it's like, no, people don't understand. Not only do people like you and I and Pile of Stuff order a month and two ahead, but Pile of Stuff actually has a buffer. Like, he's shown it in some of his videos, where sometimes he has like 20 packages, and he grabs them from, sometimes from the first in and sometimes from the last in. So depending on how he grabs them, it could be literal like half a year by the time he opens a package. So I mean, if you're listening to this and you think you'd be able to remember all the stuff you ordered, for half a year, then good on you. I know I can't.
Yeah, that's right. And some of it's a bit obscure too, and that's the other thing. So sometimes I'll get variations on something that I've had before that maybe it's a simple capacitor. It says, oh, it's capacitors, but it's rated differently, and I'm racking my brain when I'm opening, thinking, okay, it's a capacitor, but what can I say until I go back and search for the exact thing, and maybe it's for a little audio amplifier or something like that. And I needed a specific rating, but I can't remember that on the spot. And I actually find it quite terrifying when I'm opening these things. And I know that some of them haven't seen the light of day because of that, because I've just tripped over myself and thought, oh my god, that's just a nonsense. I can't put that one on the channel.
Yeah, Scott, the Def Palm, he surprises the hell out of me because he orders so many like very specific things for very specific tasks. And at least from just watching his videos, for the most part, he knows exactly what he ordered them for, which is very impressive, because he'll be like some obscure like HP test measuring thing from the 90s needed a specific voltage regulator that goes, to negative 5.21 volts or something. He's like, oh yeah, here's 5 of them. It's like, it's impressive that he remembers.
It is, and it did used to be a little easier too, because uh, there was, going back probably maybe 18 months, 2 years, there seemed to be a lot more packages arriving with a specific part number or a specific description. And then it became electronic parts or something, so something fairly vague, but it might still have had some reference. It had a reference on it that I used to cross-reference with the ordering. And I go, oh, yeah, that's right. Now I know what's in it, so I can sort of prepare a little bit. But now with drop shipping, everything is covered up and it doesn't say anything on the outside. It's certainly probably better, in terms of getting more parcels at once, and it seems to be a bit faster, and probably it's a bit environmentally friendly to have them all together, but it obscures completely what's in the package until you actually open it.
You're 100% right about that, because I've seen an uptick in packages that have 3 shipping labels stacked one on top of the other, and you can't read the bottom one. So the bottom one would have sort of the item description, or at least the AliExpress order number on it. And then the second one they put on top from another drop shipper or whatever, it would have a reference number that's on the first label. And then the third one on top would have a reference number that's from the second label. So at the most, what you can see is the third label clearly and the reference to the second label, but the original label with the order number is nowhere to be seen. So I'm left using flashlights and stuff to look through the labels to try to get some numbers to match it to AliExpress, so I can write when I ordered it, when it came in, and what the price was, because people love seeing that. So
Yeah.
it takes me, more work, and then it goes into my buffer, and I have to wait until I have 5 items, and that could be 2 weeks sometimes. So then I forgot what the item is a second time.
This is all the behind the scenes magic. But it's true. I've done the flashlight thing myself too, and and then it's crazy scenario. My wife and I standing, with a flashlight behind us, going, "Is that an A or is that a?" It's quite strange.
Oh yeah, the things we do to entertain, right? Because we could just open it right up and it'd be good to go.
Yeah, well, that's definitely what I used to do until I, as I said, I found myself watching a lot of mailbags, and I thought, hey, maybe I should be providing this as content as well. And it's fun. It's fun. It's a little stressful, but it's fun.
Did you know that I cheat quite often? And if I'm working on, let's say, a PCB way project, which I have time, or there's like a timeline for it. I have to get it done before the end of the month, because they only want they want a certain amount of videos per month if possible, but they have a maximum of videos per month. So if I have, let's say, 3 videos on the go, and there's 1 week left to the end of the month, I have to finish that video, and then next month, I can do the next week, I can do 2 more videos. So it's 1 month and 2 the next month. So sometimes I cheat and I open packages beforehand, but I film it as if I'm filming a Mailbag video. So I'll open up the segment by saying like, oh, first we have this item, or next we have this item. And then I'll just slide it into a Mailbag video. And the only way you'd be able to tell is in my intro, I specifically say, I've got 5 packages, so it's time for another Mailbag. But if you look on my table, I only have 4 packages, and not one single person has called me out on it yet. So I
I
keep getting away with it
blame the maths teachers, Dan. That's what I would do.
for sure. That or people just aren't watching. I'm not sure if they're just listening to it, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I do this all the time in class. I'll hold up 4 fingers and I'll say, "There's 3 things I want you to remember," and nobody picks me up on it. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah, in class, I get some classroom time too, especially now with the new program that I developed. They're not necessarily automotive people. They're people with general skills, and they come in to learn automotive. And so I always slide in little things like that, and I find the level of the level of engagement I get from those students is less than the students that come in to do their apprenticeship levels that are already automotive folks. So yeah, I
Yeah,
always slide in stuff like that, and nobody gets it, but that's fine because it entertains me, and that's what's
exactly.
important to me.
Exactly. It's got to be entertaining for you as well. And I think ultimately that's going to, if you're engaged with the lesson, then that's going to come across anyway. So those little things are great. I mean, I've been doing this thing for forever, where I'll take a whiteboard marker and I'll be doing something on the whiteboard, and then at the end I'll say, "Okay, let's recap," and I'll hold up the whiteboard marker and put the cap on. And I've been doing
Oh
that
my
for
god, that's the best thing I've ever heard.
and I've been doing that for a couple of decades, and the students are really happy with it at the start of the year, and they just hate it at the end of the year. But that's what I do.
That is awesome. My favorite thing, honestly, I guess I'm a professor. I don't like calling myself a professor. I feel like I'm more of a teacher, but whatever. That my favorite thing to do is when I blow the students' mind. Like they don't they when they come to a realization from the buildup when we've been learning one week to another, and then all of a sudden I get to the point where finally what they're learning has a practical application, the whole thing. And you see their faces light up like, oh my God, I get
Yeah,
it now. And it's like, that's the best part. That
it
at least I
is.
find.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And this is probably why, because a lot of people say to me, why do you teach mathematics? I did start off my teaching career more in science and mathematics, but sort of drifted across pretty quickly, and I've been pretty solid most of the time in mathematics. It's because the bells that appear, or the light bulbs, whatever you like to call it, those moments that the students get when they go, "Oh my God!" I mean, that's what I live for. It's so intense, and it tends to happen middle to late secondary school, when you've been doing all this background, you've been doing all your numeracy work, you've been doing all your algebra work, and it's sort of a little out of context. In fact, it's hard work to put it in context. It's one of the things that you need to work on the most at the lower levels of high school, is providing some context and some motivation for that work. But then it comes to year 9 or year 10, and some of these concepts start to tie together when you're doing some trigonometry work, or perhaps in year 11 when you're doing some introductory calculus, and the students they just go, "Oh my God, that is unbelievable," and that's a magic feeling.
It is. It's incredible. Um, wow. I just completely forgot what I was going to say. So I feel like I'm one of my students at the moment.
Well, it is quite cold, so maybe.
Yeah. It's freezing. It's 14 degrees in my shop for anybody listening. And I've started calling out Americans for using the imperial system. But let's see, 14 C to Fahrenheit. That is, oh, geez, Google, don't fail me now. 57.2 degrees Fahrenheit if you live in the US, Liberia, or Myanmar.
They're the only 3 left, are they?
They're the only 3 left. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, that's incredible, isn't it? But it is interesting when you look at videos or whatever done by scientists or NASA or whatever. They're obviously swapped completely to metric, because for the obvious reasons. But yeah, gee, they're hanging in there, the general population, against all odds.
Here in Canada, we've got a crazy mismatch of metric and imperial. So, for example, how tall are you, if you don't mind me asking?
That's a good question. I was stunned to find out that I'm shrinking. I think I got measured recently at 178 centimeters.
Okay, 178 centimeters. I don't have any idea what that means because here in Canada, our height is in feet and inches. So I'm 5 foot 9 inches. Even though most of our stuff is metric, height is still in feet. So I am, I believe, 178 centimeters. Does
Oh,
that make sense? No, not
snap!
178. Give me a second. Give me a second. 5 foot
It's
9 inches, 2 centimeters. Yeah, 175. 175.
175. Okay, yeah. So I think I'm not quite 6 foot tall, but I wouldn't know how close I am to 6 foot. But I do know. Well, I thought I was around 180 centimeters tall, but maybe I was measuring with the shoes on. But I definitely got measured the other day. All I was wearing was a hospital gown, and it was 178 centimeters. I couldn't cheat on that one.
Yeah, we're roughly the same height. You're a little bit taller than me.
There you go. It might be something to do with
So
being at the bottom of the world. I'm sort of
yeah,
falling off.
yeah, but yeah, you should being pulled. You know, your feet are rooted, right? And then you get pulled up because you're falling off, right?
Yeah, I
Is
hope
that how
so.
that
I hope
works?
so. Yeah, I think so. It's a
Oh
tricky
wait,
concept, gravity.
I shouldn't say rooted, right? Because Australians, that means something else, doesn't it?
It's a bit of a red flag. Yeah, that's it's all right though. It's all right.
Yeah, because it's what is it? Koalas that eats shoots and leaves,
Eats
eats
roots and
roots and
leaves.
leaves.
Yeah,
There we go.
yeah, yeah. That's shocking. Yeah,
Oh
that you have
God,
been listening to too much, Dave.
I have. I actually, for some reason, there is a large amount of Australian YouTube creators. And I think Big Clive told me the same thing about Canadian YouTube creators. So I find that odd because I mean, we're not small countries geographically. I mean, Australia and Canada are huge, but our population is just not that big. I think we're 38 million in Canada, which is fewer than people in California. And I don't know how many are in Australia, but it feels like there's a disproportionate amount on the internet.
Yeah, I think we're around the 26-ish million at the moment. I'm not sure the exact figures either, but that sounds about right. But it is interesting, and I when I'm looking for very specific, highly technical work, like I can remember not recently, maybe a year or so ago, I was trying to find some techniques for doing multiplication and division in assembly language. Just generic, nothing specific, not for a specific processor, but just generic, trying to understand the process. And the best videos were from India, and they obviously have some very good courses over there, which they put online. And all the best explanations came from these Indian. Looked like a lecturing situation at high school or perhaps university, and they were just brilliant.
I find India is like, because of their technical revolution, like I think people are joining the internet at like faster in India than they have ever in the whole world. And so I think the internet in a couple of years, maybe even 10 years, will look like a very different place because um, you know how when the internet was young, all the Western worlds, it was all the nerds that got onto the internet and they
Hey,
started
hey,
sharing.
careful, careful.
It's true. It's nerds no longer derogatory, but it was
Good,
all
good.
nerds, and they were sharing stuff like, for example, Dungeons and Dragons, and then there was like lots of sciencey stuff. Like scientists, they just could not wait to share their stuff, so they were sharing it online. And I feel like the exact same thing is happening in India right now. Is that all the Indian nerds, all the science types, the tech types, the computer types, they're all going on the internet on droves and doing exactly what the Western world did when they had their digital coming of age. And
Yeah,
so I think the internet's going to look way different in 10 years, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
yeah. There's an interesting difference I find between the the videos, which are always very high quality and very spot on, but there also seems to be a number of web pages where there's clearly information there which is incorrect, and that's led me down a few rabbit holes in the past. So I'm very wary of some of the content which is being produced. I guess this is across the board in on the internet. Some of the content on blogs. It's terrible to talk about blogs because I have one as well, but it's not always great. So I tend to go back to a few sites. But the videos that people produce, where they go through the technical theory and then it's demonstrated, just superb for learning. So it's brilliant. When I think back to scratching around in libraries trying to find specific books about specific topics way back when, the internet's brilliant that way.
Yeah, I feel it's possible that it's because um, websites and stuff don't really have a feedback mechanism in the same way that, let's say, a YouTube video does. As a YouTube video, as soon as the like dislike counter is disabled and the comments are disabled, you know it's a load of trash. It's
Yeah,
garbage.
good point. Yeah, good
But
point.
there's no such thing in websites, right?
Yeah,
I guess, well, I guess WordPress by default wants you to have comments. I just turn them off because apparently it's just spam bot heaven. But yeah, there's no feedback, and so I think that's why it's allowed to exist. Same reason why controversial figures, they typically go, let's say they go on Twitter and whatever, but they make their money off books, like hard copies, because again, there's no feedback mechanism for that really.
yeah, yeah. And you don't know what you're getting when you buy the book.
That too,
Mm.
right? There's a paywall there. You're you're almost already guaranteed, um, maybe not guaranteed, but you're already more prone to like the person or the author because of what is it? Is it confirmation bias, or what is it when you want to shore up your decision? Make sure that you've made the right decision, so you defend. I don't
Yeah,
remember the psychological concept there, but
I'm
people
not
have a
sure either, but
tendency. Yeah, people have a tendency to defend their views when they've chosen it. So
absolutely. Yeah.
I find
So
that a
you'll
lot in.
always look for people. I mean, I know that students will say to me, "But I saw it on the internet." And I say, "Hey, look, on the internet, Elvis is still alive and living with Michael Jackson on an island somewhere." So, you can't use this sort of echo chamber of similar sites or similar views to prove your point. And in fact, part of teaching students of that age is to try and give them some critical thinking skills and some filters to be able to say, okay, what is that person saying, but really the really important question is why are they saying it, and what do they hope to gain from it?
Correct. Very, very true. I point my students, I'll mind you, we're talking about technical subjects. I point my students to Wikipedia all the time. And my students tell me they told us in high school we're not allowed to use Wikipedia. I said, I don't know for what reason, because I know that was a thing too when I was growing up. But I said, Wikipedia is a very good way to get the gist of a concept. Like they tell you very simply what the concept is. And then if you follow the references, you can typically get the more detailed and nuanced explanation on Wikipedia. And I
Yeah,
think if you take Wikipedia, you can't cite it because it's a secondary source, but if you go to the citations, read the source and cite that, then you're in good shape. You just can't you can't regurgitate what's on Wikipedia and say that that's the idea, I guess.
no. So so what you're saying is basically you're saying this is the tool, here is its limitations, and as long as you're aware of those limitations, it's fine to use it.
Correct. Yeah. So for example, some of my students have trouble with stoichiometry.
Yep.
They don't understand. Well, they need to understand the relationship between fuel and air inside of an engine, and the concept is not I mean, it's simple, but it's not obvious, let's just say. And
Yep.
so the Wikipedia article on it, it's maybe 300 words, and it gives you basically everything you need to know. And so I tell them, like, if my explanation doesn't work, you need to go get another explanation, right? Sometimes just hearing it in different words is better.
Yeah.
So I say, here, go look at the Wikipedia. Um, I happen to teach in French, so I tell them, Wikipedia on the left, you can change the languages. So if you speak both languages, you get it explained twice to you, type thing, and then usually that helps.
Yep.
So
Uh, I,
that's my thing with Wiki.
And I find, particularly with the younger students, the difficulty with Wikipedia is that the information can be up to, university level and beyond. So it's just, but even just accessing the words because it's just too heavy in terms of the literacy requirements. But there is a little trick that I teach them. So when you go to a Wikipedia page, the first part of it is, well, for me, it's EN, which is English. And if
Hmm.
you delete the EN and type in simple to replace it, it gives you a simplified version of that page, which is ideal for younger students and sometimes even some older students to just get the bare bones of that. And it's often written well. It's written in a way that which is more accessible if your literacy isn't high.
That's
It's a
very
little
true. And
it's a little
in
hack, a
fact,
little Wikipedia hack.
I believe on the side, on the left, on the bottom, where you can change languages, sometimes yeah, there it is, simple English. So there's actually, whenever you're on an article, if you go to the left and you scroll down into the list of languages, you can actually click simple English,
Ah,
and
there
that's
you go.
exactly what you're talking about.
So
Yeah,
that's the hack of the hack. Well done.
there we go. Yeah, we got layers here.
Yeah. Oh, I see it. I see it. I see it. Simple English. Yeah, very good. Well, that's one that I'll use with my students now. But although they do find it, because I do talk about it in terms of a hack, and they go, "Oh my God, we found some secret portal." So they enjoy that.
That's no, that's but you know what? That amount, any amount of motivation is good. And
Yep.
so if they feel like there's a trick, quote unquote, that makes their lives easier, it's something they're not, quote unquote, supposed to know about.
Yeah,
That's
that's
sometimes all
right.
that the motivation that's needed.
Yeah, we're not teachers. We're magicians, really, aren't we? Yeah.
Exactly. Have you ever thought about taking your blog from Blogspot and making it your own sort of website?
Yeah, I have. And in the past, I have done that because I've had a couple of travel blogs, I guess you could say, which have been brilliant, really, because, you know, motivation is that when you go on a big trip, for instance, we're in England for a couple of years, that you would keep a diary, and take photos and put it all together. That's the old style. But I've actually done, maybe weekly entries. So this is what we did this week. Here's some thoughts from one of the kids or from my wife or whatever. And then it seems a bit crazy at the start. It's a bit of work, but oh my God, 10 years later, 15 years later, looking back on that, it's a great, great thing to have. So some of those in the past have been on my own, my own blog or my own space or whatever. And I'm fooling around at the moment with enough Raspberry Pi and Orange Pi, um, sort of like ideas around the house for automation. And I've got one which I just made a video about, which is dropping all the ads as it comes into, or a lot of them as it comes into the house. So it wouldn't probably take much to set that up. So I have been thinking about that. I'm worried about security, and I've had a chat to the IT guys at work about that, and what they would do, and they basically use the strategy that fish use, which is to all swim together and hope you don't get eaten. But I'd like to make sure that the security is quite high on that sort of thing because reputationally, one hack and one bad post, and there goes my career.
That's very true. That's very true. I'm um, I'm of the mind, which is not to discount what you're saying. Security is very important. I'm just I'm of the mind that knowledge should be free, and I don't have a good way to put my money where my mouth is, aside from like my YouTube channel. But I mean, I've got a lot of automotive knowledge, about 16 years worth of it now, that is stuck in my head because I can't really make an automotive YouTube channel. Because 6 months out of the year it's too cold to film outside and in my non-heated tiny garage, and B, because even if I did film outside, then you'd very easily be able to deduce where I live, basically. So what I've gone and done is I've started a website. I started danfixescars.com, and I feel like that's going to be my contribution to the world in my knowledge. My knowledge is, I feel like I've got a lot to offer, and I think this is the way I'm going to do it. So um, just working on my own website, I was just wondering how come you used a blogspot page, which is perfectly fine, but how easy it is to make WordPress sites these days. I just thought maybe that crossed your mind at some point.
Yeah, I'm not sure why I chose Blogspot. Probably because some of the earlier travel blogs were on there, and it was just an easy thing because I was familiar with the format of it. When the internet first started, I used to make up my own HTML, my own pages, and one of the things which irritated me about that was as soon as you change your provider or a provider falls over, all that information is gone, which is very depressing. So I had a lot of work in maths and science, which literally disappeared overnight because the provider folded. And sure, they were a small, Australian ISP, so I probably should have known better. But it was early days, and I didn't think that that was a possibility. And I suppose Blogspot is it's Google based. I think Google own it. So I'm betting on Google at the moment. I, I haven't really looked into that for a couple of years, so I probably should revisit that space. And I just wonder, can you easily migrate all of that information, which is now, for me anyway, it's 130 odd posts, a lot of links, a lot of information, a lot of diagrams. Yeah, a lot of information.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm still a very beginner when it comes to making websites. But I believe there are automated tools for that. And the crazy thing is about nerds and internet, like I was just talking about, a lot of them make up scripts and stuff for fun. Like they just release it for free to the public. I'm even looking at WordPress. For those of you listening, WordPress is like a website you can go to and host a website there. But it's also software that is used that you can use for free on your own web server to build websites. It's incredible. I couldn't believe that it was free. And a whole bunch of the themes and the websites and whatever is all completely free. So don't think that I'm talking about WordPress, the website. I'm talking about WordPress, the software. But
Right.
there are plugins for WordPress that people have built, and all these plugins are free. Like some are paid, obviously, but it's incredible what you can find. So I was just wondering, because me being a internet newbie, I was just seeing what your thoughts were on that, basically.
Yeah, I guess laziness has driven it. It's working at the moment. I don't have to worry about security. The blog that I wrote back in 2005 for the trip to England is still there. So I'm pretty
Very
happy about
nice.
that. But I'm just looking online while you were talking, and I do see that you can export from Blogger to WordPress. So yeah, I'm sure those tools exist.
Yeah, and at the very least, you can export from Blogger to your own computer, and then upload from your PC to WordPress. I,
Yeah,
I guess would be the thing.
yeah.
If anyone's wondering the guides and stuff, I would go check out either another maker's channel or Develop with Dan's channel. I haven't seen those two people in the same room at the same time, so it might be the same person. Just
Yeah,
saying,
Batman and
just
Bruce
saying.
Wayne. Mm,
Yeah. Peter Parker and Spider-Man and
there
et
you
cetera,
go.
et cetera.
Yeah.
Hannah Montana and Miley Cyrus.
Yes. There's some obscure references for people to spend their afternoon now.
Yep. So how have you been lately, Anthony? I guess we got into tech conversation really early in this podcast.
Yeah, pretty good. Your post about your video about the malware sort of was tough to listen to. So I hope you're doing better. But we've just, as it seems like a lot of Western countries have, just opened it up and had this sort of let this thing out and see how it goes. Um, it's been tough. I think it's existentially. It's difficult to deal with a situation where you believe that your elected officials are there to do their utmost to protect the population first and foremost, but then you find that perhaps it might be the economy which is driving their decisions, which is frustrating because, of course, if you don't have healthy people, you definitely don't have a healthy economy. And so I'm just starting to realise, probably a little too late in life, that the elected officials that we often have aren't the best and brightest from our bunch. So I'm going back to some of my early times reading some science fiction stories about dystopian and utopian futures, and wondering about whether we should be looking at not so much how to fix the system that we're in, but maybe redesigning the system so that it's a little more shock-proof than what it is at the moment, given that we are facing some existential threats that not everyone acknowledges, but is the system actually resilient, whether that happens or not? And at the moment, it clearly isn't.
Oh yeah. Um, yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think at this point I've lost faith in elected officials of any side to do the right thing. And I don't even know if it's really the elected officials, but more as my fellow countrymen and neighboring countrymen and whatever. Because it seems like a lot of people fall victim to online disinformation, and disinformation that is very pervasive and is very purposeful. Like I am. There was a study, for example, and this episode will probably be demonetized just by this, but you know what? I don't care. The podcast literally makes 60 cents per episode, so it is what it is.
But that's
But
quality. It's quality.
yeah, I mean, you get a lot for your 60 cents there. But it seems like there's a recent study that's shown that 2/3 of vaccine disinformation, like provable disinformation, came from 12 online accounts. 2/3 of it on the whole internet came from 12 accounts.
Yep.
And I think only 2 of which were organizations. So you would assume that a lot of the other ones would be paid by organizations type things.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm sitting here. I've got some sociology background. I did I did about 5 years of a 4-year criminology degree. We can talk about why I didn't finish it some other time, but basically, I went back to university later in life, and so I have a lot of sociology and criminology background knowledge in me, and I find it very strange how the same people that are beating the freedom drum or whatever are buying stuff from, buying information from countries that they would consider to be at war with. They would consider that they are at war with, hook, line, and sinker. So I just, my thoughts and trying to be more positive on it is I'm just going to do my thing. I'm going to do danfixescars.com. I started a YouTube channel based on it as well. I'm going to do simpleelectronics.ca when I get the website up, and the YouTube channel that is already existing that will go along with that site. And if I go broke because of mismanagement on my hand or by my government's hand, either way, at least the information will be out there. And if I'm able to help someone in their, pursuit of knowledge, I will be happily homeless, but at least I would have helped someone, right?
Yep.
I feel like there's so much negative in the world. I'm going to put some positive out, and I know I should be focusing on probably other stuff right now, but at the moment, I just want to be the change I want to see in the world, and that's all I can control, basically. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes any sense. I don't know if I
No,
was
it
just
does.
rambling for nothing, but
No, it
yeah,
definitely does. And the
that's it.
whole idea of sphere of influence and sphere of concern, I think it's important for mental health, but also for maintaining positive, like moving in a positive direction. Is to say, okay, so I can't control everything. I'll do what I can to control it. And there's a lot to be said for leadership by example too, where you just do what you know is correct and works, and your integrity is intact, and you have that positive nature and that positive approach, and then people pick up on that just by being around you and by seeing your example. And that's a powerful thing. I guess in a way it's called by various things, but like the bystander effect, where you step in and you say, actually, this is another way of thinking about it, or this is another way of doing it, and that's a very powerful message for people.
I hope so. I hope so, because yeah, there's so much negative. I just want to be a small little area of positive, and
Mm.
we can dick around and buy cheap electronics and have a blast and let the world burn around us. I mean, it just is. It just is what it is at this point.
Pull up the drawbridge. So speaking of simple electronics, what is floating your boat at the moment? What are you working on?
Well, let me just look around. Well, you know what? A few things are floating my boat. Actually, thanks for asking. I'm trying to build a dirty area in my workshop where I can sort of cut metal, cut wood, that kind of stuff. And I was lucky enough that a company called Shinwini, it's a company you probably haven't heard of because I didn't until they emailed me. They sent me a 3D printer for review, which was neat. I felt like that was a really a positive sort of marker of my YouTube channel's success when someone wants to send me, I think it's a $500 machine for review. But they didn't tell me that they were also sending me a laser engraver. So these are one of these really dangerous kind of open framed ones.
Yeah.
Um, so that's neat. I'm excited to start playing with that. And I convinced Banggood to send me a desktop CNC as well. So I'm really excited to start playing with that. But first, I need to set up that dirty room, which I'm working on. It's just I have to weigh my options at the moment if I'm buying groceries or if I'm buying lumber.
Yes. And
Type
I'm
of thing.
guessing that occupational health and safety is an issue too. So that means filters and extractor fans and all that sort of stuff as well, because it's not cheap to do it properly.
Yeah, I'm not doing it properly. I'm gonna say that publicly right now. I haven't where my shop is there. It looks like there was a dryer vent there, and it's been capped off and sort of just like left alone. And so I've taken it over and I installed a cheap fan from Amazon, and that'll blow all my smoke outside. So that is as proper as I'm going to get. And what I'm going to do also is I'm going to build an enclosure to put on top of the laser. And so, because this fan is not very powerful, it should be grabbing all the air that's, all the smoke that's made by this laser and shooting it outside. So
Yeah. And
that's my plan for being as safe as possible.
maybe a charcoal filter to protect the neighbor's kid.
Yeah, possibly. I could do that. I could do that.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's winter, so nobody's outside. I don't have to worry about
Yeah,
that
just the
until
squirrels.
quite a while. Yeah. Plus, I live where I live without giving it away too much. I don't have any neighbors behind me. I don't have any neighbors in front of me, and honestly, nobody goes outside. And where the
Yep.
vent is, it's kind of far away from people. So for the moment, I think I'm okay with just shooting
Yep.
it outside. Plus, I mean, the neighbors on both sides are smokers, so if I have to deal with their tobacco smoke, I feel like this is just a little bit of payback here.
Go have some laser CNC fumes.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, I'm going to be running it in the evening, nightfall. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's as big of a deal, but yeah, I really should get some sort of HEPA style filter.
Yeah. And
I think
are you doing this to increase skills in this area, or do you have at the end of this road some projects where you say, it'll be in this box, it'll have this, it'll do this?
at the moment, I was excited to get those two things because they are cool. Um, I don't have any like projects in mind for them. I would love to try to engrave circuit boards with the CNC, but I also saw that I can't remember who, but they managed to engrave a circuit board using a laser engraver. I think they painted the copper black so it absorbed more laser energy, and then they fired it with the laser, and they were able to cut tracks out of it. So it's
Interesting.
these kinds of experiments that kind of interest me.
Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of people literally in their basements going, oh, gee, I wonder if I could do this, because popular theory might say that's not how you do it, but they don't have that theory. They just say here's a possible pathway, and it's great. I think it's great that people are doing stuff like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was just talking to the previous guest before you. The person didn't approve their appearance yet, so I can't say who it is. But the person was telling me about where we're talking about 3D printing technologies and stuff. And I think I'm just a technology buff. Like I love tech and new types of tools and stuff like that. So I think that's what excites me the most about kind of the CNC world type thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that's I'm amazed at how cheap these products have become, and I just think it's great. As soon as they become, well, they pretty much are ubiquitous now. There's not, there's a lot of people that say, oh, they're only what, $300 or whatever, and they'll go out and buy them. And yeah, the more people that are experimenting with this, I find it amazing that there'll be a new video every day, and it'll be something like, oh, this is how you improve the quality of the print or the strength, or the you add this to it, and then it's UV protected, or whatever. All these things are happening. That might have been the realm of very high tech, very expensive companies not that long ago. I saw a graph recently, actually, I think it was on Twitter, of the expense of 3D printing before it became open source. And so I think that's the critical thing when it falls off a cliff, is when there's open source, and there's enough volume in the market to ensure that the actual individual items are cheap enough that people say, oh yeah, I can do that for Christmas this year, and then some amazing ideas come out of these minds that aren't fettered by how you should do things.
Yeah, and this is why I'm learning programming, because I can sit here and complain all I want that there's no good alternatives to, I don't know, let's say Adobe After Effects or whatever. Um, but I that's not productive. What I'd much rather do is learn coding, and then and then basically build these projects out of my own time, because like if you listen to the malware podcast, I don't have money, but what I do have is time. And so since I can't afford to give any money, I would really love to support open source software by being a developer. It'll be a long time before I get to that point, but there's nothing I dream of more than being a useful human being. So
Yes.
I can't wait until I learn
That's a
enough to be useful.
that's a damn fine inspiration for getting up in the morning, though, isn't it? To be better.
I sure hope so. Um, because like I still, I watch I watch your channel. I watch people like Brian Locke. I watch Bit Looney. All these I Sion the Unexpected Maker, and I watch them code, and it's like, man, you guys are like absolute geniuses. And they are geniuses, but it's not because they know how to code. It's because they've practiced it, right? The coding part is like the least sort of intellectual thing about these people. They're just smart people. But like, yeah, I feel like I need to learn some skills like that to
Well,
to
for me. There's a
contribute.
large element of coding is about what do you want to happen. So that it's always the design. It's probably the thing that's hardest to get across to students, is that the two big parts of engineering is design and communication. So I often say to my students, it's all very well to be, because they'll present an answer, and I'll say, what's the solution? It's a very different view. And they'll say, but I have an answer. And I said, you can't be the smartest person in the world and not know how to communicate. You need to have people following you. So you need to, um, clearly state the method that got you to that answer, and that's what's important. And the design aspect of doing coding is a really critical thing. And I love looking at elegant coding. So are you familiar with the work of Ben Eater?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I've watched his videos years ago, but honestly, it's just way over my head.
Yeah, it's incredible what he's doing. So he's building, and he actually has a kit that you can buy. He's building an 8-bit computer from scratch. Every single part of that, from how the timer works through to communication protocols and how do you hook up a keyboard to it and all that sort of stuff. But his coding and the way he thinks about his coding, he's doing it in assembler, but it could be written in any language. It's the process that he uses. So this didn't work, so we try this, and this is how we could do this better, and all that sort of stuff. It's just brilliant. It's so amazing. So yeah, I don't know that we used to get hung up, and maybe people still get hung up on, if Twitter's any indication anyway, of what language should you be using to be a proper developer. But I think it's all in the design, and I think you're quite right. Once you get down to actually punching the keyboard with your fingers, the hard work has been done in general. There's a bit of debugging, and oh my god, why did I do that? But I think I think it was Einstein that said that he carries his laboratory around in his mind, and yeah, I do stare off into space quite a bit, and a lot of that is okay. So what's the most elegant? What's the best way of doing this? And so a lot of that code, in a way, is sort of written before you get to the keyboard.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, I've had conversations with Scott Shawcroft, for example, who is I believe he is the lead on Circuit Python, like the one who's actually programming the tools people use. But I feel like what's most incompatible for me in coding is that I'm having a hard time learning and remembering the tools available to me. Like, I can have an idea of what the program wants to do, but because I only know like 5% of the tools available to me in that language, I'm trying to work out how to solve the problem with those, with those tools. Like, for example, I have in the textbook I'm following for C++, for example, they're asking me to make a sorting algorithm. And I was like, oh my God, like I have no idea. And then I asked another maker and he said, oh, just, compare one thing to another and then move the things around when you know the answers, or whatever it was he told me. And then he said, any reason why you're just not using the built-in sort algorithm? And I'm like, I didn't even know it existed. Right?
Yeah, it's
That's the
classic, isn't it?
problem.
Yeah, it's so true, and I think sometimes we get it the wrong way around. I would definitely encourage people to start their programming journey with an examination of data types, which would have led you to arrays, and then whether it's built in or whether you code yourself around that array, there's your sort routine right there. Just the idea of being able to hold and manipulate data in a particular type. And I definitely find working with the small brain microcontrollers that data types, if you start there, then you can have great success. And look, I fell foul of this just recently. So I was taking a program which I could use on the Arduino, and it was pretty trivial, and then translating that to the A-Tiny 13, which was also fairly trivial. But then when I got to the Baduk, suddenly the data types bit me. And if I had have started with an examination of data types to begin with, it wouldn't have been such a problem. But the Arduino is very forgiving of throwing all sorts of different data types, and it'll just deal with it. But the Baduk, not so much. So yeah, it can bite, but it's a very good lesson to learn to start with. What's the type of data that you're manipulating? How should you store it and manipulate it? And then the code will flow from that.
I believe in C++ we're going over data types and how when you try to multiply a data type with another, it gives you, like let's say a double with an integer, it'll chop off the end of the like the decimal
Yep.
basically and give you an integer answer or something like that. But again, there's like memorization here too, because I mean, reading about it is one thing, but remembering it when it's comes time to application is another thing. So it's like coding is one of those things where no matter what I learn, I'm going to have to practice it over and over and
Yep.
over and over.
That is true.
And
That
so
is true.
again, that is another frustrating part of it, because it's not just something unfortunately, as logical as programming is, it's illogical because it's like trying to speak a language you're not yet comfortable in. You're
Yep.
still going to be like stuttering and looking for words often, right? And that's what I feel like programming is like.
Yep. And it's practice is all it is, and it's to me it is a creative process. I don't understand why from the outside that programmers are viewed as sort of almost like accountants, but in fact, it's such a creative process. It's amazing. So I more liken it to something like painting. And with painting, there are brush techniques. You have to understand light. You have to understand perspective. But when you put that painting together after months, years of practice or whatever, it's bringing all those skills together. But there's such a creative force to make what's on the canvas, and it's the same with programming. And I think when people get into it, they understand that, but it's viewed so weirdly from the outside that it's some dry, boring, methodical, logical process. It's not that at all. There's a lot of, like, as I said before, a lot of the hard work, a lot of the joy is in the design, and then when you go, hey, I can see a way to do this, and then you either bring in the skills you have, or you work to discover and explore those skills and then bring them in. It's a beautifully creative process that I think is way underappreciated, particularly by people who pick up their smartphones and go, oh, I can play Wordle on my smartphone. That's great, but think of everything that's going on behind that, and it's mind-boggling.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the artistic side is like in I forget the word you said. Is it like elegant design
Yep,
earlier?
yep,
Because when you see something like when I can build something, a program that does what it needed to do in 20 lines, and then I see somebody else's solution, which is like 4 lines. I'm like, oh my God, that is
yes,
brilliant.
yeah.
Like, it's incredible, that discovery that, man, you can do the same amount with less, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I guess then it comes down to what are you trying to achieve there. So I've always got to balance out that elegant, speedy solution that uses less resources with, again, that idea that someone needs to, if I'm demonstrating this for other people, for students or for online, that people need to be able to follow the logic behind it. So I'll often post code on the blog or on the channel, and people say, "Oh, you could do it this way," and I go, "Yeah, I could," but then I'd lose the educative value of it because people can't see. It becomes almost like spaghetti code. There's some obscure way of doing a bitwise operation that will make it faster. And I do need to sometimes have that in mind because I'm trying to squeeze things into small processes. I'm trying to squeeze more and more. One of the ones I did recently was operating a stepper motor from this crazy 3 cent Puduk um, microcontroller. So that's a weird thing to try and do. And then, the code being small and being elegant is really important. But in part of my mind is, well, that's great, but can people also follow along what's going on? Part of that is commenting the code, but a lot of it is constructing the code so it logically makes sense, not just throw up a concatenated line that will do the whole thing in 1 or 2 lines. That is elegant, but it's not always possible for other people to see what you're doing.
Very true. And like, for example, you post the code on your blog, just for people who are listening that don't know this. And I went and took a look at your most recent video, the programming the ESP over the air,
Yep.
and I'm looking at it. I have no idea how you program it over the air. So let me just kind of paint a picture for the people. I'll put a link in the description and in the show notes if the people listening want to follow along to this specific post. I don't know if I can link to post specifically, but I'll try. So basically, Anthony includes ESP8266 Wi-Fi, ESP8266 MDNS, Wi-Fi UDP, and Arduino OTA
Yep.
libraries. So there's 4 libraries. Then we've got 3 constants, one with the Wi-Fi SSID, one with the
Yep.
Wi-Fi password, and then I'm not sure what the other one is,
So that's
Blinky
the
OTA.
yeah. So that's the host. So when your Arduino IDE is looking for the programmer, whether it be a serial programmer or through USB or whatever, one of the ones that will come up is the Blinky OTA, and it'll have the local address. And if you watch the video on that, I think at some stage you'll see a screenshot of that, so you can actually see Blinky OTA as the programmer. It's quite amazing. So you can name that anything. You can call it, my ESP, device, or whatever you want, and that's what comes up under programmer in the Arduino IDE.
Okay. And then I see you have you define your LED pin. That's all standard stuff.
Yep.
Then in the setup, we've got the LED pin as output. That's normal. Digital right, LED pin low. I guess so. I think ESP has reverse logic, right? I think low turns on the LED. Am I mistaken there?
For that one, no, I think it's the other way around. Yes, because if
Okay.
you look down in the loop there, you'll see digital write high and then digital write low. So I think I'm just saying make it output and then make it low to start with. So I don't want it on right at the start.
Okay.
And then
Gotcha.
the Wi-Fi is set up, and that's basically your libraries that are included at the start. So your Wi-Fi, your first three libraries there, allow you to communicate from the device itself to whatever is out there, and in this case, via the Wi-Fi password and the SSID. So that's just
Okay.
setting up that that Wi-Fi by a lot cleverer people than me. And sometimes I dive deep into those libraries, and sometimes you have to. But basically, if someone else has done the hard work on these are standard libraries that you can get just by going into the library function of your Arduino IDE. And then the next line says, okay, so you've set up, but let's actually connect. So it just basically waits. In the original code, which I think is actually one of the standard examples you can grab, it's got things like serial print line waiting for connection. So if you do happen to have a serial connection, you can see I've taken all of the serial setup and prints out of it because I'm not debugging this. It now works. So I just tend to take that out at the start. But in that loop there, that while loop, while you're waiting for connection, it would literally say print to the screen, waiting for connection.
Okay. And then you set the host name.
Yep.
And then if there's an error, then you restart. I guess you
Correct.
reboot the ESP. Okay.
Yep.
And then Arduino OTA begin. So that
Yep.
basically calls whatever the library function is on the Arduino OTA library.
Yep.
Basically, it starts it.
Yep.
And then here, this line. What is this one? In the loop, your first line is Arduino OTA dot handle with the
Yep.
two
So
open
that's
close brackets.
basically the loop is just continually checking, is there a connection? Is there a connection? So this is the very basic version, the version that I'm working on at the moment, because I've switched from ESP8266 to the ESP32. So you'll see this in upcoming videos. It will have another function which will just say do something. So it'll be Arduino OTA handle. That is, are we currently looking at an over-the-air upgrade of the firmware or the program, whatever you like to say? No, we're not. Okay, let's go on and do something. And then what I want to do is set up this idea of, it's sort of like fake multitasking, where you set up a value that says what is the current time, and then keep comparing it in that loop. And if it passes 2 seconds, then turn the LED on. But if it's not, do something else. So you can set up these multiple almost threads within the program that's doing stuff, but then it's also continually going back to the loop and saying, is there an OTA upgrade? I imagine that this is fairly heavy in overhead, but then we are talking about considerably large microcontrollers than, for instance, the A-Tinys or the Padooks. These are devices that have 4 meg, 8 meg, 16 meg of flash available. So even this program here, which seems pretty heavy, takes up a tiny amount of space on those devices.
Oh yeah, and honestly, ESP32 it's a ridiculous overkill for most, like small hobbyist programs. I don't think I've ever ran out of either memory or storage
No.
on an Arduino, like let's say Uno. I have run into issues on the AT Tiny 85s, mind
Yep.
you, because with the DigiSpark bootloader, it does take up a little bit of space.
Yep.
But yeah,
And that,
no, not on a AT Mega 328p. Never. I've never got to the end of that.
Yeah. So this is a classic example of a program where you do have that overhead. So you just say, I just grab this library, that library. I don't care if they're bloated or they've got other stuff in them. I just wanted to do it. But then if I was to squeeze this into something smaller, then you look at, okay, so what is the ESP8266 Wi-Fi library doing, and what do I actually need from it? And then you go about, rewriting it, and that is quite a rabbit hole, but it's quite rewarding too. So I'm getting down to almost the stage now where I'm looking at switching from C for the Paduk down to the assembler straight from the data sheet, and so that even though it's only 1K and not a lot of those hardware peripherals are available within the chip, you can hard code it. So you can do something like, I think it happens with the A Tiny too. There's no serial connection, but there's a soft serial. So you do it through software. So yeah, there's all sorts of different ways around it. And I find that quite gratifying, but time is the issue. And with something like this, where I just wanted to see, can I program this over the air? The whole point of doing this project is that I'm trying to set up Wi-Fi access points on the property that all connect to each other. So it's a Wi-Fi mesh. And I'm thinking, okay, so let's say one of them is having battery issues. I'd like to actually go in there and be able to talk to it, and then maybe upgrade it, maybe change the cutoff for the battery at which it goes to sleep. So I need to upgrade the firmware. So it seems like maybe it's pointless stuff, the OTA, but the project, the big picture project, is having all these devices, solar powered Wi-Fi access points over the property, and then being able to still talk to them and upgrade them if something better comes along in terms of firmware. You're still able to do it without actually opening up these weatherproof boxes, pulling out the ESP 8266, stomping up to the house, plugging into your computer, upgrading. Imagine doing that for 8 or 10 devices would be a nightmare. So the idea behind the OTA stuff at the moment, which seems a little bit out of context, but the context is to be able to talk to all these devices and upgrade them no matter where they are.
I also want to just address one thing, because you said that it sounds pointless, and I know what you meant, but maybe the viewers don't know what you mean. And because we're on YouTube, we get a lot of people asking us like why we do things, and I just want people to understand that sometimes sometimes doing the thing is the why.
Yep.
I just want to make it very clear that a lot of the times when we're doing stuff, it's for fun, it's for learning. Sometimes doing the thing is the why. There doesn't need to be a why to everything that a YouTuber does. So please cut that out, please.
No, I agree with that, and certainly some of the like when I've been getting this big deep dive that I've been having into the Paduks over the last 18 months or so, I haven't really seen. I suppose there is a bit of a why in that I've got some projects like little candle projects and little Christmas lights and silly little things like that, where I'd just like to keep squeezing down and down and down into the amount of power required and the fancy of the effects or whatever that it's doing. So that's the why. But it is a deep learning project, and yeah, it's quite enjoyable. You do get those comments, as you say, where people say, "Well, you can just use an Arduino for this," and I don't really know how to respond. I don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I have we're at like hour and 15 minute into the podcast. Let's be honest, only the hardcore fans are still here at this point.
Yeah,
I have
and
this
hello to those people. What are you doing with your
Yeah,
life? Come on.
exactly. I just want to say, like, I have a project that I'm thinking of in summer here, well, probably in spring. I just ordered some more techs, some thermoelectric generators, and I was thinking, if I build an insulated box, so let's just picture an insulated box with a metal bottom and a glass top. So maybe insulation foam, kind of rigid structure, and then a glass top. And then inside that box, you have 9 thermoelectric generators in an array 3x3, and they're painted black. And so in that box in the summer, it'll get swelteringly hot. Here, like I can imagine this thing going over 50 degrees easy,
Yep.
especially if you use double pane glass or whatever. And then on the bottom of this box, picture the array has a massive chunk of aluminum, or maybe 9 individual aluminum heat sinks, and it is in the shade of its own box, and it has access to airflow, just normal convective airflow.
Yeah.
I would love to harvest solar energy without a solar panel like
Mm.
that.
Yep.
And why? I'm going to get like milliamps out of each one of them. But who cares why? It's literally free energy, and so the concept to me, it tickles my fancy.
Yeah.
That's why I want to do it.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. And look, if you look at the, you know, I've watched YouTube videos where people say this is how you do YouTube videos, and you find your niche and you keep hammering away at it. And I actually don't find that personally very exciting. So I tend to leap about from into 3 or 4 different things. So I'm currently working my way through the CD4000 series logic chips. So they pop up every 3 or 4 weeks. There's the Paduk stuff, which pops up every 3 or 4 weeks. I've been doing things like lighting the workshop and making a power supply for the workshop. So that pops up from time to time. So some of these are, a clear project in mind, and then there's the many steps along the way. But others are just like, oh, I wonder what this chip does. I found it in the bucket. I might have ordered it, 2 years ago. Let's drag it out and find out what it does. So yeah, with no purpose in mind whatsoever.
I actually ordered a whole bunch of 4000 series logic chips with the sole purpose of me doing research and seeing if I can use these chips with only the datasheet as the examples, as the source,
Yep.
and then learn it well enough to make a YouTube video to show other people how they work.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
think
my
that's great.
challenge to myself. So I haven't been watching your logic. I haven't been watching anybody's logic chip videos for that simple reason. I want to learn by myself
Yeah.
and see if I can do it. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, they're very good, and I like going from the very simple ones, which is just like an AND gate, through to, at the moment, I'm just looking at like a JK flip flop. So a bit of a combination of different logic gates to produce an outcome, and I just think they're great things to play with. And it's interesting, some of the comments that you get from people like Pile of Stuff is a huge fan of that, not microcontrollers, but where you're doing the logic at that sort of more base level. And yeah, it's very gratifying. I like combining them with microcontrollers. Obviously, the microcontrollers that I'm using sometimes run out of pins, and so to be able to do something extra and just have it distilled down for the microcontroller to eventually process and have an output it's fun stuff.
Yeah, it's like, for example, when Pile of Stuff gets excited about Charlie plexing, and then he makes an entire video on Charlie plexing, a concept which can be explained in literally a Wikipedia article. It's not a complex thing, but it's so much fun seeing him have fun and build up
Yes,
circuits and flip LEDs. I mean, who doesn't like seeing LEDs light
I
up
know,
as a
I
result of
know.
your work, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I had a conversation recently. I think it was with Jeff Geerling.
No, don't know about him.
So he's the Raspberry Pi guy. So he does a lot of Raspberry Pi work, and he was talking about the difference. Or we were chatting on Twitter, really. So you could probably find it there, and it was just talking about blogs versus the videos. And I was saying, look, it seems to be that you do need a video with blinking lights. One of my most popular videos goes for a matter of seconds. It's a particular logic chip. I think it's an inverter. So a signal comes in, and then each one is inverted from the next one. So it's basically 8 or so lights flickering away quite happily. It goes for a few seconds, and basically it says, look at the blog if you want the details. And it's got something like a couple of thousand views or whatever. It's by comparison to my other videos, it's crazy. And I was just thinking that you do need the blinking lights, the video, the hook, that hopefully people then say, oh, well, that's really cool. I need to go and find out what's in the data sheet and find out what the code is behind that. So I don't know that one can exist without the other. So it seems like, I think I said on Twitter, it seems like it's like double entry information bookkeeping, but it seems that people need both a very strong visual aid to the learning, followed by a blog which maybe details what's going on, or vice versa. I'm not sure how it works actually.
Another maker has actually told me once, and for those listening, that's the another maker, not just some other maker. He's told me once that most people don't give a shit about how it works. They just want to see it working. The
Yeah,
vast majority of people don't ask. Like I forgot, for example, I forgot to post the files for my snowspeeder, which I said I would, but I just haven't gotten around to organizing them. So I never ended up posting them. Nobody's ever asked me for them. Nobody wants to build it. They
yeah,
just want to watch it go.
yeah.
That's it. They only care about watching it. So
Well, the
I think
popular
he's onto
theory
something
is,
there.
sorry, yeah, the popular theory is, I think anyway, from what I've seen, and again, I'm a newbie at this, but is that you show the finished product at the start, and people go, "Oh, that's really good," and then you show the build up to how it's built, and then you revisit the finished product at the end. So I don't tend to do that. I've only just really started doing that. I show basically, I think I've done quite a few videos where there's a notebook and me with a pen, saying, "Oh, look, we could do it this way," and it's so boring. I look back on it in hindsight, I think, "Oh my god, what am I doing?" It's 5 minutes of me waffling about the theory behind it, and when you look at the video, you can see you can see people dropping off. So I've started to go, "Hey, look, look at this weird thing," and then start with the theory behind it. So it's strange for a teacher to be so naive as to how people, um, actually take on board information. But there it is.
Well, I can tell you as a creator, I'm more concerned with doing something than I am with how the video is going to look at the end. Sometimes I go through my files and be like, "Oh, I filmed this completely wrong." But I guess at the time I was just trying to mess with something. So I guess it's part and parcel because we do what we're interested in, and sometimes the video suffers because of it, and
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah, and I don't have time for refilming, re-editing, whatever. So you get all the ums and ahs in there with me, and there's very little editing, very little fancy stuff. I'll overlay a little bit of code onto it. I'll overlay, a picture on the video or something like that. But basically, I'm doing stuff and I'm filming bits and pieces, and then I just put it together at the end. Maybe the whole process of putting the video together and putting it online might take, you know, 30 minutes to an hour. It's not long. And I use very simple techniques and very simple software to do it. So I have a day job, I guess is what I'm saying, and so I just squeeze this into the cracks between them. And I've got two new puppies, for God's sake, so they're taking up all my time at the moment. So very
Well,
little time for being fancy on YouTube, unfortunately.
well, this is embarrassing because I do have the time. I just don't have the wherewithal.
But it sounds like you're on the journey, which is the important thing.
Yeah, I'm not going to stop. I mean, even if even if the world starts collapsing around me, like I was saying, I'm just going to keep going, and hopefully, I don't have to be in a comfortable spot in my life to entertain people. So that's what I'm going to keep doing, and I
Yeah,
hope that people appreciate it. And that's it. I mean, that's all I can do.
yeah. Well, I did say, I think for the very first time, almost breaking down the fourth wall and acknowledging the people who are viewing it on my last video, which was the OTA one. I said, thank you for being here. Like it does. It I am happy to see people looking and responding to the videos. And then I said something like, I know I'm supposed to say press like and subscribe, but you know what? You do whatever you want to do. You be you, and that's the attitude that I take to it as well. Like I'll just keep doing it, and then if you find it interesting or terrific, that's great. If you don't, so be it. There's plenty of cats playing piano videos out there to cater for to cater for all tastes, and that's a good and healthy thing.
Yeah. And honestly, if you're listening to this podcast and you're this deep into it, you need to go check out the OTA video because it is super interesting. And I feel like even being the coding dummy that I am, I could make it work. So if I can make it work, there's no reason why anybody listening to this couldn't make it work.
Yeah,
So
I love it. I love it, and maybe it's a factor of my age, but I just find it amazing. Hey, look, Ma, no wires. It's so good. I'm just holding up an ESP32. I'm holding it up to the microphone so you can see it. It's an ESP32 which I soldered myself onto an adapter board. I've got the headers there. Of course, it was blinking an LED, and then I changed the frequency. But I've also just before stumps last night, I put in a relay. So I'm going to hopefully be running the LED and the relay from the ESP32. So you've got all sorts of interesting problems in there associated with, the ESP pumps out 3.3 volts. The relay requires 5. So there's a logic level shifter in there. All sorts of little interesting things. So yeah, it's really I'm really enjoying this. The whole process. Whether anyone else finds it interesting or not, entirely up to them.
Yeah, that's their problem.
Yep.
That's
So you do use that's what I said on. Yeah, very cavalier. But that's
exactly.
I can be cavalier when I've got 100 views. If I had 100,000, it'd be a bit different, I guess.
Let's see. Let's see if this works. So just to recap. Oh, my recapping didn't make any noise. That sucks.
That's a
So
shame. It's a visual joke.
just yeah, it's okay. Well, some people can recognize the sound, because especially like a Sharpie usually has a very good sound. Give me a moment here. I got to get this. Here it goes. Nope, too quiet. Oh, um, so anyways, people, if you're listening, you should go check out Anthony's stuff, either the blog or the YouTube channel or both. I would especially appreciate it, though, if you can go check out the over the air, the OTA video, and comment that you do watch his videos, and maybe say a couple kind words, because as YouTubers, when you put out something that you're really proud of and nobody comments, it's like telling a really good joke that you worked really hard on to crickets. So go and
Yes.
comment.
Yeah.
And
It's
we do, as YouTubers, we do need our backs patted every once in a while. So please go do that.
yeah. I love the telling a joke analogy, because I have this problem with my kids all the time, because I'm a terrible dad joke person. So I sent this one out, and speaking of crickets, I sent this one out to my kids yesterday. It's my 31st wedding anniversary today. So I sent them out this. I said, I first met my wife at a maker jelly in the shape of a US president class, and I knew she was the one from the moment I said Eisenhower. And
Wow.
and no one replied to that, So that's very sad when it's your own children. But anyway, that's the way it
Yeah,
goes.
because obviously when someone doesn't laugh at a joke like that, it's because they didn't get it, and since it's your kids, it's your fault they didn't get it, basically.
That's right. The circle is complete.
There we go.
Mm.
All right, so we got to wrap this up. I usually ask all my people the same question, but you're on your second suck of the salve, so I don't really have a question for you aside from where do you want people to go? Like where do you want them to go find you?
Yeah, I would like people to enjoy the blinking lights, because I think that is an important part of it. But I really enjoy the feedback that I enjoy the most is from people who've looked at the code or looked at the project and have said, "Hey, have you thought about it this way?" And I love that. I think that's when the community is working really well, when we're feeding back in a respectful, positive, and constructive way on the things that people are doing. And I think also for immediacy, and I haven't put the Twitter information on YouTube, but I think I'll start doing that. It's really joyous to have that immediate conversation as we're doing now. Obviously audio, but on Twitter it's fairly immediate as well, and people can feed back and say, "Oh, does anyone know what I can do to do this?" And then there'll just be 20 replies saying, "Do this. Have you thought about that? Try that," and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's just brilliant. The community works really well when we're doing that sort of thing for each other.
You're not at One Circuit on Twitter, are you?
I probably am. Let me just check. I
Because
think I am.
the person that's at One Circuit his name is Adam.
Oh no, that's not me. Oh,
And his
I am. I'm on my full name. So if you look at Peck Maths, so that'll be me. So it's a picture of Kelly, the Gordon
there we
setter,
go.
on there, the typical avatar, and it says husband, father, educator, YouTube guy, Klingon spy, over dramatizer, tea maker, lover of puppies, and champion of honesty. That's a hell of
There
a
we
handle,
go.
isn't it? Yeah.
It is. Yeah, because the other one circuit, the false one circuit,
The
his
original.
opener is that he's a follower of Jesus Christ. And
Oh,
I mean, you may be or
great.
you may not be, but I just don't think it has much to do with electronics.
No, that's not me. Well, I tell you what, Twitter is a strange universe, you know. So yeah, it's an eye opener. It's brutal in some ways, but I just love the immediacy, and yeah, sometimes the honesty too is it's very refreshing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if you say something wrong, the Twitterverse will call you out on it for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have
We
any closing thoughts before we go?
No, look, I really appreciate having a chat, Dan. We should do this more often, whether the mics are live or not. It's fun catching up with you, and yeah, you know, we have a bit of a common history. I said at stumps the other day, and early in the conversation, I should say, and you knew what the reference was. So it's really nice having a chat to you. So yeah, appreciate your time.
Yeah, makers in general are pretty cool people, but Anthony is would be the cool person whether or not he was a maker. So you guys should definitely follow what he's doing.
Thank you for that, Dan. Have a great day, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, and we'll catch you listeners over on the next episode. But I'm going to be checking the comment section of the OTA video, and you folks better be there. Thanks for
Thanks,
listening.
thanks, Dan. Cheers.